Hey folks, Steve here with another all green alike video for you today. We're going to be looking at least turn two. I'd really like to get through as much of this scenario as we can because I'm getting more familiar with the system as we're going, and showing every movement on camera or every, immediate initiative roll is going to slow things down really, really badly. Turn one is an hour-long video, and I don't want to do that for everything. I do think when we get to a combat, that's going to be worth slowing things down. So just to recap where we're at, the Union is moving, is making some level of progress to get through the territory that it needs to, but is going very slowly. They did not have very good movement die rolls. They're kind of moving along. The rebels successfully screening and maneuvering, while Johnston is desperately trying to move forces forward to have a proper fight of it. And many of the previous restrictions on Johnston's forces are now gone. So we should see those brigades, which are off camera down here in the south, we should see them making it further north and potentially engaging, depending on how ragged we want forces to get in fighting. I've been very careful with the Union forces to not exhaust them. Now that sort of the opportunity cost lost would be, would have been force marching them to get further along. But we'll see if maybe we can make up the difference here in the coming turn. The Union would really like to win some initiatives, get some high movement die rolls, and get into a good position to contest the Johnston reinforcements. But we'll see how it goes. Um, so with that, at the beginning here, there is a leader transfer phase where leaders may be transferred from one subordinate to another. I don't see, I'm going to move Johnston really quick. I'm going to move, uh, actually, the Union leaders are roughly where I would want them to be. So that's actually fine. So not much in the way of leader transfers. And we're just going to go right into the action segment. So we'll just start with the initiatives and we'll roll on. I think what I'll do for this video is um, I'll check in every few initiatives, after so many goes to show the game state. And then once we start coming to really climactic situations, I'll definitely talk through the repercussions of that. So ideally, by the end of this video, if it's an hour long for you, maybe we will have finished up the whole scenario. We'll see where we're at. So we'll just start off with the initiative roll, and I'll go from there. So first initiative, potentially a very important initiative roll, actually goes to the Union, which is just what they wanted. So I'm going to start playing through here, folks, and I'll come back from a cut with hopefully a very different game state than what you see here. Okay, here we are after several activations. We had a really good opportunity to maybe attack Jackson a couple different ways and wear him out, but unfortunately, the Union did not get the back-to-back activations they would have needed to really put the hurt on him, and Jackson managed to retreat back to the Kearneysville hex, which is one that they will need to defend. So the missed opportunity for the U.S. Army there, and then Johnston managed to get some back-to-back activations such that he managed to get these sets of brigades. One, they forced marched forward a good bit, and then on a second activation, they got what they needed to get into this hex. It's not the perfect position, but they've taken, having done a forced march already and being disorganized, I think they're in reasonably okay shape. The strategic thing that really matters here is that the rebels are in the next defensive line and can defend there. And obviously, all things the same for attacker and defender in the system, being the defender is an advantage. So they can hold there. I'm a little more worried about their ability to sustain a front and not have Jackson surrounded. So we probably do need to get somebody moved over here. But at least for the moment, there's still the potential here to hold ground. And in terms of the actual victory point calculation, The United States actually needs 4 victory points to achieve a victory. So, despite having functionally 2 right now, um, that wouldn't be enough to win. So, if the game ended right this second, it would be a rebel victory because there's only 2 victory points for the United States on the board from holding or controlling one of the red marker hexes. So it does put the onus on the U.S. to attack. That is what the rebels would prefer to be the case. So again, just the order of the initiatives and how much movement points the rebels got have advantaged them so far in the scenario. Um, you could maybe say that the U.S. is having the worst luck out of the 2 factions here at arms. And maybe not totally unexpected, but a bummer. If they had only gotten slightly better die rolls here or there, the situation might be very bad for the rebels, or at least Jackson would be in trouble, and then the Union could capitalize on the rebels being off um, off balance. So these guys, being disorganized, that may or may not be a major factor. Um, the Union's going to have to think about what they can achieve at this point. What I may want to do is get a brigade holding this spot here, this river crossing, have the other 2 come down and try to push on Jackson, maybe even get him surrounded and flank attack him and get rid of him. If they can do that before maybe one of these guys moves over to help, that'd be ideal. Because what would be more convenient is this division kind of is duking it out while the second division is clearing and then moving further south to kind of reap the benefits there. So yeah, tough to kind of say what's achievable yet. We're only partway through, still in the relative early phases of turn 2, and the situation is still developing. But Johnston's guys are at fatigue level 2, so if they want to do any other maneuvering, they're going to have to be very selective with what they want to do, or else they'll become exhausted. Meanwhile, the Union still has some movement left that they can execute to get some things done. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to do initiative to start us off again, and that is a tie. So that is a Confederate, a rebel initiative. So I'm going to play through, and we'll come back when we're in another state worth checking out. Okay, I wanted to check in now because I think we've had what could be considered a string of good Union luck for the first time. I feel like the whole game so far, where we were able to get Kimes units activated with enough movement to get around Jackson here. Now, granted, this is putting them into a fatigue state, but I felt like now was the opportunity to operate. And then so I was able to make that movement. They rolled pretty good movement, period. Survived their extended movement die rolls, which wasn't too hard. They're organized, so they didn't have any major issues. And so they moved a unit here, moved a unit here. I would have had to have attacked with Negley first or independently, but I didn't want to do that. So I just put them into position to cover Jackson, and then the luck of the draw was going to be, does the Union get to go again and maybe try to attack Jackson before he can either extricate himself or do something? And the Union got the initiative again. So I have Kime, who's going to go again, and it's going to put him into a fatigue state. And I think we're going to have an attack on Jackson is how I think this is going to go. And because this is our first real combat, I wanted to make sure we kind of walked through it carefully. I have already rolled his movement. He got 4 movement points, which is enough to do a prepared attack. So we are going to do that. And then what I didn't do yet was determine. I believe because we're doing this activation, there is still an extended march, I believe. Yeah, that's going to be the case. This may affect things. There's going to be a +1 modifier, a +2 modifier to this, and he rolled a 1. So no losses for the extended march, which is him going to the 4th fatigue level and doing a prepared attack on Jackson. The reason why I waited to do this is because now that I'm just simply activating this stack or this unit to do the attack. Um, I could have maybe had one of these guys formed up with him all in one stack and do an assault, but I think on the combat results table, as best I can tell, like I think it's better to get the flank bonus if you can get it than it is to increase your strength attacking, because the ratio modifiers and this, that, and everything else, it is better to get a good clean flank off. So despite Negley not attacking, Negley being here and providing the coverage on the hexes provides the flank bonus. What's important is we are covering all 6 hexes around Jackson with either Union units, U.S. units, or ZOCs, which means that we should get a decent set of modifiers here. So with the combat, we're going to have to start piling up our modifiers. This is simply going off the charts and tables. So first thing, we're going to have a +1 as the attacker from the prepared attack. So that's a +1. There's no ratio modifier because the stack attacking here is a 4. They also have a 4. So 1-to-1, that's a +0 on that. The tactical modifier is a 0, 0 versus a 1 for Jackson, which is that center number there, or the leftmost one on that series of ones on the Jackson counter. So it's a -1. That affects the attacker's die roll. So we were +1, now we're -1 for that. So it nulls out to a 0 right now. And then we take into account the artillery modifier. So you can see the second number there, and maybe we'll zoom in just to help with this. Jackson has artillery. This unit, Abercrombie with Kime, they do not have artillery. That's a problem. So the artillery ratio or differential is -1, and we're attacking what is rolling terrain, which is that green color, which we reference that and we get a -1. So now we are at a -1 to the attacker die roll, but then we have the flank. So if to determine flank, we're looking at the coverage of hexes. If it's 6 covered hexes, then we get a +4. And then there's different things that can affect that, where it could be reduced to a lower number based on a variety of different results. And best as I can tell, none of those apply. And Jackson never did something which we haven't really done or talked about yet, which is refusing flanks. Jackson did not do that, and maybe we should have done that, but we just didn't get to it. So that's just a straight up +4, which means that the attacker modifiers all total up, I believe, to a +3. I'm looking around to see if there's any other factors that would apply here, and I don't think so. So the Union die roll modifier is a +3. The defending modifiers, if I look at the list, and this is all on the combat charts, defender die roll modifiers, not in a mountain, not in across a bridge or dam, or not at a ridge. We're not defending across any water there. We're not defending in a hill hex, so the rolling doesn't really have any use for combat. It's just good for the artillery differential. And yeah, everything else that I can find, there's no other modifier. So the differential for the rebels is 0. That means the total modifier is a +3, and so we're going to roll dice. Each side gets to roll a die, We'll add a 3 to the United States roll, and then the final result will tell us the combat die results. So that feels like a mouthful. Um, so we're gonna roll dice. So this is good. This is very good. So the rebels got a 2. The Union got a 6. So that's almost as good as we could ever hope to get. So 6 plus the 3 is a 9. 9 to 2 differential, that's a 7. So what we need to do is we need to cross-reference on here the differential of plus 7 to the defender's combat value of 4 leads to a 2 DR. And then when we compare that to the same attacker value, that's a lowercase a, which I do need to kind of think through how this is going to work. The results should be, I think, manpower steps lost, and then the DR is going to cause a disorganized and routed result on Jackson, I believe. I believe that's the case. And then the little a is going to allow an advance after combat. So let me double check how this is going to work, because now we have to look at the retreat rules. And there's a whole subsection of the player aid chart that talks about retreat rules. And I believe this is going to require Jackson to retreat through enemy Zocs, which may affect even further his manpower. So this is, despite me complaining about the slow roll for the Union, they just got a coup here, a really excellent result that they got an attack off. They got really lucky. They got the movement they needed. They got the movement points, and they managed to get an attack off. Now these guys are going to be absolutely exhausted by the end of all this, but it's going to be worth it to kind of shut Jackson down almost entirely, and we will have taken another victory hex requirement, and then we have less need to concern ourselves over here. We can continue to apply pressure, but we've kind of like this die roll maybe will have decided the scenario, because Jackson as an entity on the board is going to be very bad, and I maybe really should have tried harder to get one of these brigades to back him up. And they were close, but we just didn't get the movement points when this unit got to activate. They rolled low and could only get close to Jackson, not nearly close enough to help him. So yeah, let me look at how this is going to operate. I want to make sure I very carefully walk through the losses and the results of the combat, and see just how bad is it for the rebels. Okay, here is the net result. So indeed, Jackson took 2 manpower losses, which will be victory points for the United States. Two manpower losses becomes disorganized, so he functionally has a combat strength of 1 at this point, and then routes, and so he becomes demoralized, and then has to retreat 4 to 6 hexes. He did 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in terms of the retreating through a Zoc, because there was a pike, this major road here is considered a pike. 1, 2, 3, 4. He retreated through a Zoc, but through a pike means that an additional manpower loss is not taken according to the retreat rules. So, that it could have been a little worse, and it might have shut him down even further. But as it stands, Jackson's going to be pretty badly out of gas at this point. And then, yes, the stack advances into Kearneysville and gets, takes control of an important victory-oriented hex. So, very, very good result. I mean, I don't, kind of bad luck through the beginning, and then, the U.S. gets just the best luck you could conceive of, which is interesting. I could definitely see where this is what's going to decide the scenario, and I'll explain why here just very quickly. That right now, if nothing changes, no other fights occur, the Union will have 10 victory points. The United States 10 victory points, which is enough for a substantive victory. in terms of the like right side here, the east part of the oh, I'm going to have a hard time with that creek's name, but this minor river on the east side, we have basically grabbed what we need, and then there's still options for the Union maybe to continue to push down and get down to Smithfield potentially, which would give them even more advantage. And at this point, Jackson's pretty much done. Well, he's done for the turn. His fatigue also got increased by 3 for becoming disorganized. He is disorganized. He has 2 combat strength. He's demoralized, and that's a whole thing I'm going to have to talk about in a like a impressions video. How many different bad states, different flavors of suck can exist for a unit. So he's pretty down and out. And when I look at the course of the next couple of turns, him by himself is not going to be able to do much. 2 manpower against organized fours, or whatever the case is for the Union, is a bad proposition and will only lead to more losses for Jackson. So at best, Jackson can try to hold further Union advance, but he's going to have to take time to recover and pull himself back together. Now, these other brigades with Johnston are going to be a little bit better off, but their problem is going to be that, while they could try to go on the offensive, that probably still, like, they themselves aren't going to have the best defensive positions, or actually offensive positions, I should say, to try to strike back at the Union. So, like, trying to push over here may be doable, but they're going to be going on, more or less 1-to-1 odds, or the defender situation is going to be such that there's not a clear way for Johnston's remaining brigades to flip the script, so to speak, and they still have to contend with pressure from Cadwalader and Patterson that they can be pushing down. And really, the Union doesn't even have to attack if they don't want to. It's more, can they hold on to their position for a couple days here to consolidate and advance. So now the onus is kind of flipping back over to the rebels, where they have to try to make up the difference, right? They either need to take back one of these hexes, like that one. That's kind of like the main one that they should be worried about taking. Um, they either need to try to take that back, or do enough damage to the Union that it's offset in manpower losses. And right now, they're at a numerical disadvantage. So, that series of die rolls, the getting back-to-back initiatives surrounding Jackson and then launching an attack that did very well. You know, that's probably determining this whole 4-turn scenario, which feels a bit swingy. It did happen, and it could have not happened, and then we wouldn't be here talking about it. And yes, those series of actions deciding this whole scenario might feel like too much, but I do figure that, well, this is just a 4-turn basic scenario. Something like that for sure would flip the scenario, and that's just the way it is. But it's only 4 turns long. The much longer campaign scenarios, this might happen for both sides back and forth, and luck gets muted out a little bit over, the longer that you're playing a campaign. So I don't mind so much that it swung really hard in this case, because I know in a broader campaign there's just a lot more going on, that this one situation turning out this way is really just one of several. So I'm not too burned about it. And hey, I don't mind seeing Jackson get his butt kicked. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Now, getting out of demoralization, this, that, and the other, we'll have to see when we get to the recovery segment how better can Jackson really get. But his offensive capability, even if he weren't demoralized, so let's assume he remoralizes at the end of the day, he doesn't have that much oomph or attacking power left to threaten the second division here, now holding a strong position. So looking pretty good. The other thing I'll mention is this situation now with Jackson kind of out of it, is it's changing this scenario from a north versus south trajectory, or north-south tug of war, into what is now an east-west tug of war, where the Union now kind of controls the right side of the map, or at least the area of operations that matters, and can now push from both the north and the west to constrain Johnston. And they don't even have to really try to fight too hard. Um, the Union could continue to pressure and do very well just moving units and covering more angles than Johnston can hope to cover and get in behind them or do any number of things. We could even look at bringing Thomas over west and catching Stuart and doing other things that's really going to make it hard for the rebels to make any headway. Now the dice could go really crazy, and we could see a different result. So right now I'm expecting it to be a Union victory, a United States victory, but we'll see how the dice goes. I'm going to get back to rolling here. That was a completed Union action, so we'll roll initiative, and it is the rebels' turn to go. So this is the rebels' opportunity to figure out what they want to do. They got these guys fatigued. If they move really any of these other units, they're going to be putting them into an exhausted state, which is probably not the ideal situation to be in um, going into the next turn in the current game state. So they really are being put in a tough position. But I'll play through a few more action segments, and we'll see where things get to. Okay, I've gone ahead and gone through the rest of turn two. There was mostly just posturing, and we're actually partway through turn three here. Um, and that had so far entailed for a while just a lot of movement, the rebels pulling back away from the more defensive terrain that the Union could use, hoping to bait the Union into moving forward, which they did ultimately do, sort of playing it by ear here. But there was an opportunity for Johnston to move, kind of surge forward and try to take a knock at Patterson, and he actually did very well. It was almost not quite, but almost the reverse die roll of what the U.S. had gotten, where it was a plus it was a +6 on the attacker. Only the strengths involved were 3 each, and so Patterson took a manpower loss, the first Union manpower loss, and got routed over to here. And it was actually the Long Necker Brigade, so they're kind of out. And while that was a prepared attack to get them kind of in better shape to do it, depending on how the initiative roll goes, the rebels actually have an opportunity to really put a hurt on the Union here. So it's a perilous position. Their center just got pushed back heavily. Some of that has to do with the fact that Johnston's got a really great tactical rating, and prepared attack with that tactical rating advantage was a +3 by default. The rebels rolled a 6, the Union rolled a 2. So maybe an unlikely result, all things considered, but that tactical advantage helped the rebels a lot. So we're going to continue on. And unfortunately for the rebels, the Union do get the initiative, which means they can do something. And I think what we'll try to do is we're going to end up pulling back with this guy, I think. So we'll roll movement there. That's quite enough. So he has enough movement to get to here, which is where I want him to be, and kind of help cover the flank there. And that will hopefully give Patterson an opportunity to do something, go back to initiative, and this time the rebels get to go again. So it's kind of tough to say exactly what we would want to do here. We could have Johnston try to do some more. It's not a terrible idea. There's almost no other point other than to try to push through here and make a difference. So try to scatter these guys. So what I may do is activate Johnston. I don't know that I want to open up this pike down here or open that up because these guys are kind of having to hold something of their own positions. But I do want to try to take another crack maybe at Thomas, push him back off, and then that allows these units to kind of snake up around and maybe force a new situation on the U.S. Army. So let me play through a little bit more, and we'll see what else can happen here. Okay, here are things at the beginning of day 4 of the scenario, the last turn. And still generally, I don't see a path to victory for the rebels. They had made that good push on Patterson, and they tried to follow it up with a an attack coming this way against Cadwallader, but that attack did not go nearly as well as the first, and it actually really kind of hurt the rebel strength in that general area. And basically, the Union's been able to respond, maintain control. The oomph of the rebels is very weak at the moment, and they have to kind of pick their battles. The rebels can really only focus where to have pretty good odds, or they're either going to end up with even odds, or maybe have a chance at having decent odds of getting a differential on a die roll. But they're contesting, leveraging Johnston, leveraging tactical advantage, but offset by, in some cases, penalties from artillery and sometimes terrain, and they're just not able to get a significant advantage. They can't get a really good flanking bonus. We had a slight flanking bonus here before Wincoop moved into the city there, but the die roll modifiers at the end of the day just couldn't get them over the top. They had some die rolls that really went the United States way, and they just couldn't make it happen. Now, I'm not sure even what I would have done had they actually succeeded. Right, the idea would have been try to push the Union out of here, and then maybe open up an opportunity to come back around if they could break the Union position. But it's just not happening. It's not coming up. So I'm going to play through this last turn. I really don't think there's much that can be done. It's more, because the time doesn't, the war doesn't stop just because the scenario ends. I do want to play the last turn and just kind of think through, like, where does that put Union position, overall, depending on how much more damage we can deal. Now, granted, if this were in a campaign game, we'd probably really be looking at how do we pull some of these rebel units back, maybe get some fresh divisions in there instead, let these guys rest, or figure out something else to do. Here we've kind of got the world is zoomed in to just this, and the Union has an impetus to attack, attack, attack. So if they can get into these areas, then call this a really, really great Union victory, which isn't really what happened historically, I don't think. So yeah, let me just play through this last turn, folks. It'll probably be, I'm not going to do too many cuts. Probably when I come back from that, I'll have completed the scenario. Okay, here's where I called it, and just got to the point where the rebels didn't see much point in doing much else. They passed, and the Union, the U.S., was happy to say, "Hey, we passed too. That's the end of it." The overall situation in terms of calculus here for victory purposes is that the United States did get to the second line of victory points, has both of them, though only one really matters. So they got 2 victory points for the first, and then 6 victory points for having one of the blue uh, areas. So 8 from that. There have been a loss of 4 Confederate manpower, unless I've been miscounting. And it could be that I missed a couple, and it's actually greater than that. I might have lost count. I'd like to think I'm pretty good about it, but I'd have to go compare where everybody's at. And you can always kind of back check, right? You can look at how much manpower was on the board at the beginning versus what's there. If I missed 1 or 2, or I did something wrong there, it doesn't have a huge impact. But at least 4 casualties, and then the U.S. suffered a casualty or 2 of their own. But that puts us in the band of U.S. Substantive victory. Let me make sure. Yeah, substantive victory. We could have pushed it even farther if I had really, really pushed to try to get into the final row. And I'm not sure I see the point in trying to do that. There's sort of limited goodness in that, but I think this is a good scenario to kind of try out the way that the system works. I want to save that for a initial impressions video coming up. So I'll stow most of that for the moment. But that'll just do it. So turns 2, 3, and 4 here, finishing out the scenario. Got to experience a lot of the basic mechanics and the considerations around, just how good is a tactical advantage of one for a side. Just how good is um, artillery versus not artillery, and this, that, and the other. Really, the tactical advantage. Johnston managed to make a lot happen because of his tactical superiority, but we just couldn't find, other than our one good attack, we couldn't really make something happen, which you know, I think the tough thing is trying to figure out who should be timid or not, right? Like if you're secure and you have a victory point lead, maybe you don't have to attack as much, and that might advantage you. But as soon as you have to switch to attack, you really got to try to make something happen and kind of shift the momentum. And I do get the sense that if you can knock something loose, right, and you rout a brigade and they get retreated 2 to 4 hexes, that's where you can kind of make something happen and get that flanking bonus, which to me is the very best thing you could hope to achieve, which makes sense in this kind of system. So that's it, guys. That's a across the Potomac first scenario, first chronological scenario in the great campaigns of the American Civil War. I will do a initial impressions video just after this, so if you want to listen to that, we'll be hitting that here uh, after this video. So take care, keep gaming, see you in the next one.